All right, so we're going to talk about the Willoughbys, the latest Netflix release. Well, actually, there were two this weekend. So, and from what I can tell, this was probably the better. I didn't watch the other one. Eric's going to talk about that here in a few minutes. So this is based on the book by Lois Lowry. It's directed by Chris Pern, who co-wrote the screenplay with Mark Stanley. It is also, as far as I'm concerned, the best original animated Netflix movie that Netflix has ever put out. I know that was redundant. I have yet to see Claws. I know you liked that movie a lot, but we can talk about that in 8 months when Christmas comes around again, because I am not watching it a moment sooner than Christmas season. And also, I also want to take the moment to shout out I Lost My Body, great movie from last year's nominated for Best Animated Feature, about a severed hand trying to crawl back to its owner, and of course you find out the life story of the guy who originally had the hand, and that's a really great movie that was picked up by Netflix, but not a Netflix original movie. So, as the title suggests, the Willoughbys is about a family, and as its cat narrator points out at the start of the movie, they are not a happy family. At least not together. They don't work as a cohesive unit. On the one hand, there's mommy and daddy who can't get their hands, their lips, or their throats off of each other. And let me clarify the throat thing, because the dad, voiced by Martin Short, by the way, this is a stellar voice casting, does this weird gargling cat call to his wife, like, you know, the like, I don't know how to do it, but it's like his throat gurgles, and it's just it's so eerie, but I loved it, and it's like his main joke, and it's just awesome. But anyway, on the other hand are the children. The children, mom and dad, in fact, don't seem to know how and when they got there. Of course, like, this isn't... Yeah, seriously, it ends up, like, the opening sequence is the cat being like, this is not a happy family, and then it shows the mom and the dad all lovey-dovey, and, like, a baby just plops out, and the first thing the dad says to the young baby is, like, the woman you just inconvenienced with your birth is your mother. And it's just like, wow, okay, that's just how that's going to start. But like I said, this isn't a question of like mixed family trees or something like that, you know, unknown branches falling from other trees, whatever. These characters designed by Craig Kelman, who did Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, but also most recently worked on The Addams Family, which surprised me. I didn't realize that. I didn't see any similarities between those two movies, but I did see a similarity between Spider-Verse and this. All of these characters are very much a part of the same family. They have this strange curled up hair, ginger hair, and it looks like red yarn. The one thing is that the mom is obsessed with sewing yarn and doing a whole bunch of things, and gets really mad when the kids make even like the slightest noise, because she's like, I can't knit, and it's just the whole thing. And I don't know, I mean, you would know this because you're working on animation right now, and I hope that's going well. We can talk about that later. But I think that CGI hair, like, just based on like the WWE 2K video games that I play, right? CGI hair is not an easy thing to do. And, you know, we're seeing it become more and more impressive, you know, like the high, you know, the pillars of animation, you know, like Pixar have been improving on this, you know, since back, Monsters, Inc. I don't remember how many digital hairs Sully had, but it was like somewhere in like, I think like the thousands, if not millions, something crazy like that. But this red yarn hair is very, very detailed, and I don't think they would have put so much emphasis on it if it wasn't a part of the story, and it is. So, in the opening montage, or the opening narration, you learn that the Willoughbys are a very successful line of family, and they all look so much alike. They all have these big red yarn mustaches and red yarn hair. It kind of looks like maybe there was some like inbreeding in there, but you know, they don't mention that at all. Of course they don't, because it's like the husbands and wives both have it. And I'm only mentioning that because I'm honestly shocked that this movie didn't make that kind of joke, because there really is a dark sense of humor here. And anyway, like, the movie explains that the Willoughbys were, like, not famous, but very successful and proud and rich in culture and polite and, you know, men's men, women's women, that sorts of things. A lineage that has sort of been fumbled by the current patriarchy, or I don't know, what's the word for? I don't think there is a parent word for that. Whatever. Nah. Basically, the mom and dad are mucking it up right now. That's what's happening. But with that being said, the family lineage is something that Tim, the oldest son, believes in. He wants to make his family great again. And I hate using that phrase, but it's something that he used specifically in the movie, so I'm going to just leave it out there. That being said, there are 3 other children with him. He has a younger sister named Jane. He has 2 twin brothers, both younger, the youngest of the family. Then they're both named Barnaby. I guess they're identical twins, and they both are shaped like mushrooms, and I guess Mom and Dad didn't realize there were 2 of them and named them both Barnaby. I guess that's what's going on there.
Hilarious.
Yeah, it's really funny. Anyway, one day, like, it's to the point, like, the neglect has gotten so bad, it's to the point where, like, Mom and Dad, like, don't even, like, give them food. They're like, oh, we eat today's food, you eat yesterday's food, but you ate yesterday's food yesterday. And it's like, but it was today's food then. And it's just like, it's a whole mess. Get sent down to, like, a coal bin, you know, like a creepy basement, all that sort of thing. Like I said earlier, they're not allowed to make noise and all this nonsense. Things start to take a turn, however, when a baby, or when a box is plopped on their front gate. By the way, I do have to mention this. They live in, like, the coolest house. It's like a Stuart Little type house, you know, like a tiny little humble, well, it only looks tiny and humble because it's surrounded by skyscrapers in the heart of, like, I'm guessing it's New York City. I don't know if it's ever specified, but it looks an awful lot like New York City. Mm-hmm. And in that box is a baby. And the baby is very attention-seeking, like, to the point where the baby, like, pulls alien tricks all the time, like, latching onto the face and just staying there, that sort of thing. And, you know, as most babies are, this is an agent of chaos. And in this tiny, orderly house, very old-fashioned family with old-fashioned practices, baby just starts running amok, to the point where the parents are like, okay, you are not allowed to come back in here until you get rid of that baby. So the 4 kids decide to drop the baby off at the end of the rainbow, which happens to be, it's a candy rainbow produced from a candy factory at the edge of town that is run by Terry Crews's character, like a clear Willy Wonka knockoff, but a sort of intimidating Willy Wonka knockoff. Wow. It's, you know, it's all, there's a lot of fun characters in here. But anyway, the plot of the story, and here's my simple one sentence log line so that we can get on to the rest of the review. After this experience with the baby and witnessing the orphanage process, as in they gave this baby to a seemingly happy home, you know, like, what's better than candy and endless candy, I guess. They decide to orphan themselves. So they come up with this plan. They take a travel brochure, they mince it up, and they send their parents to the most dangerous places on the earth, and hoping that somewhere along the way they quote-unquote orphan themselves. They never say, oh, I hope we kill our parents. They say, we're going to orphan ourselves. So it's like, this is that sort of macabre. You know what word I'm saying. I hate that.
Yeah, macabre.
Macabre. It's that sort of macabre sense of humor. Thanks for the English lesson. I needed that.
You're good. Come from all that reading. No.
No. No, that's not fair, because I read that word all the time, but it does not help me at all. It's just like how I read interviews from these directors, but I don't know how to pronounce their last names. That's not fair at all.
Fair.
Yeah. So this is a very fast-paced movie. Like, this isn't the only movie I'm going to talk about the pacing with, because it's sort of like... I'm trying to think of another appropriate example. It's sort of like cinematography, you know, like when I'm taking notes, it's kind of hard for me to take notice of something unless it's either really bad or really good. And this pacing is very fast paced. It's very energetic. It reminded me a lot of Wes Anderson, and specifically the Royal Tenenbaums, and that children are all gifted and intelligent. And you know, like, it doesn't help that the movie also has a soundtrack that feels a bit borrowed from the Royal Tenenbaums as well. And the Royal Tenenbaums soundtrack is, you know, bar none. Like, that movie's just, you know, that's my favorite Wes Anderson movie.
Yeah.
Anyway, so this was, like, totally for me, and I don't know how much of it is for kids. I mean, you know, that being said, it's like the argument can be made, how much is Shrek for kids? You know, like, these are jokes that you now understand when you're an adult, but, you know, like, they're pretty and they're candy-colored or candy-coated enough that, you know, kids might not notice them. I think the parents will have no problem enjoying this movie. The animation style, like I was explaining earlier, is, it's very interesting. I think I've told you several times, I'm getting sort of tired of, 3D animation, you know, how you had set up the Pixar posters right next to each other, and I'm like, these character designs look exactly the same. I'm pretty sure we've had that conversation like 100 times.
It was the Spies in Disguise next to Onward. And
those just aren't both Pixar.
No, but it's funny because it's like there were two Tom Holland characters, and they both looked exactly the same.
Right, yeah, exactly. And, you know, like, the good thing about those movies is that they have very strong writing teams that you can focus on the story and not get hung up on the animation. But, of course, you know, animation is at its best when all of the components work together. Like I was saying, the animation style here is very visually interesting. The clouds sort of look like cotton candy in the air, which is made all the better when this transportation device emerges from the candy factory. You know, there's a lot going on. I know I'm missing a ton of things here in this description, but, you know, like, I also don't want to waste any of the surprise. A lot of it obviously feels a borrowed, sort of. You know, like, if you didn't get it already, there are hints of, you know, Roald Dahl, who I was going to say the guy who wrote James and the Giant Peach, but he wrote that. So, you know, you hear James and the Giant Peach motifs in there. You get Willy Wonka, Mary Poppins even. There's a nanny character who comes in after they send the mother away, who's voiced by Maya Rudolph, and she's great. I did read a review that was like, the way she was talking took the critic aback, and I guess I hadn't read it like that, in the sense that it was like a sort of, I guess she was reading it as a sort of Mammy-like character. I didn't see that, but, you know, like, she and I, this is a critic I met at South by, so she and I have different perspectives on things, but so that's something to keep in mind. But, you know, there's a lot of fun in this family, and, you know, even though it takes some, it borrows a lot of elements, it's very impressive that it can still find its own voice in that chaos. And I think the movie, like I was mentioning earlier, the movie has a very dark sense of humor, and I think it thrives when it unleashes that. You know, like, there are times where you feel like maybe it's pulling back a little on the humor, but sometimes there are other times where it just lets it fly, and oh my god, it's hilarious. I was like giggling very hard, like stomach ache giggling. You know, like, there isn't much that didn't enjoy about this movie. I thought, you know, like, happy endings, you know, and there is something to be said for the amount of stuff that is borrowed here. But again, like, when you can mash things together and find new recipes, you know, same ingredients, different results, you know, you don't get a 10 out of 10 on originality, but, you know, it's still a lot of fun. So I'm going to give this 4 out of 5. You definitely need to check this out because you said you hadn't, right?
Yeah. I'm super excited to watch it. Like I said, I saw the trailer like a day or two ago, and I think I got to the point where like I saw the animation style and it did feel familiar. And now that you mentioned that it was the same guy who did the characters were designed by the same guy who worked on Spider-Verse, but also Addams Family, and like
that
it
was
makes
literally
sense.
My first point in the review. Thanks,
Yeah,
Erik. Thanks for
like,
listening.
No problem. Like it completely makes sense because a lot of the characters look similar to, especially in Addams Family, they look similar to the Willoughbys. So I'm very hyped to check it out. And there was one line. I think it was around the time that they were talking about getting rid of their parents that I was like, oh, it's dark. Okay, cool, I'm in.
Like, well, I think orphaning themselves is dark enough. That's very sick humor.
Yeah, and that's what I knew. I was like, this is the kind of movie for me.
They never straight up say, oh, we're going to send our parents to our deaths. You know, they say, we're going to orphan ourselves because, like, you know, other people wouldn't put that together.
Yeah.
You think maybe that just mean running away. That being said, like, they discover, like, one of the main antagonists of the movie is like the Department of Orphan Services or whatever they're called, and you know, they're sort of like life-sucking alien beasts or something, and the way that they converge and the way that they organize themselves, you know, it's satirical in a way. You know, this movie doesn't have a very super positive outlook on the orphan experience. Because, like, well, okay, that gets into spoiler territory. So I've said all I need to say there. I'm not going to spoil the movie.
I think it's cool that Netflix is kind of jumping into this, like, animation wave. Like, I think especially after Klaus, which, like I said, I've seen it, I think it's amazing. And I personally think it should have won Best Animated Feature at the Oscars. I think they're on a high streak of gunning for that Best Animated Movie award. The Willoughbys could have a chance, seeing as a lot of stuff is on the back burner.